All right, so what I wanted to talk about tonight, now that I'm kind of in cruise control mode here, wanted to talk about med school and what it's like, how you get in. That's crap, go away. My experiences personally, and just sort of generally how it goes. So, as should be relatively obvious, med school is a pretty, competitive, selective thing to try to go after. I covered this in a kind of medium amount of detail in a previous stream where I sort of just blazed through like everything that you need to become a doctor. This I'll be focusing purely on med school, so it'll be a little bit different and kind of some more, specific info. So anyway, lots of people want to go to med school, or think they want to go to med school at least. So it's tough to get in. What that means is that if you are thinking of going to med school to compete with the crowd, you generally need to kind of get started early and, do a bunch of stuff that is sort of like de facto required for med school admissions. And we'll talk about med school admissions a little bit here shortly. But generally that means, like, in college or even high school, like shadowing a few doctors, kind of getting an idea of what you think you might want to do. Though I would say the vast majority of people change their mind once they actually get through med school and have some, relevant experience with all the different specialties and stuff. But that seems like a pretty decent wand, right? What can we use that for? Like a spell slinger? Oh, but it's a shitty base, though. The damage over time multiplier is probably just wasted. I don't know. That seems cool. I want to make a trip back to town and sell all my crap. So if nothing else, this is alteration shards. So anyway, med school, like, you kind of suss out whether or not this is actually like a viable path for you early on. And, then in college, that's when you sort of start buckling down, and like you've got to take all of the prerequisite classes for medical school, which usually include like, it's a bunch of biology and like kind of halfway, kind of like sophomore level chemistry sort of stuff, like organic chemistry, and those are sort of like legendary classes that suck that you have to get to med school. So all race spectrogems? Is that good? Probably not. Right, so you need to take those classes. So there's a fair amount of biology. Like, actually, the course load that you needed to take, and I mentioned this before, but the course load you need to take as prerequisites for med school was enough to get me a biology degree on its own. So it's a lot of stuff. They want you to take a whole bunch of different things to, supposedly inform your decision to attend med school, but the secret here is that none of it actually does. Basically, and like I said, I'll cover kind of med school admissions here in a second, but like pretty much all of the things that they want you to do have very little or nothing to do with actually, doing well in med school or being a doctor or anything like that. So anyway, you get your relevant experience, and then you basically just get good grades. You do good grades in all of your classes. I want to say overall the average GPA for people accepted into med school was a 3.6. And that's, obviously pretty tough when your course load's, so like intense. So what that doesn't take into account is that not all 3.6s were created equal. I personally can recall, so I made the crucial mistake of being a physics major, and I mentioned this earlier, which is, sort of a degree that's made to, like, prepare you for having a job in, some sort of, like either in academics, for one thing, like if you continue on with your physics track, like getting a master's or PhD or something, or to like work in industry, like crunching numbers, or do engineering or something like that. So basically, like, passing is good. That is not at all the case for med school, and they don't consider that. Or, well, they say they consider it to a degree, but having served as someone who reviews applications, I can tell you that that's not very highly considered. Like, the difficulty of your coursework is not very high on the list of things that matters. And in fact, most people just will like dumpster your application if the numbers aren't good enough. Which, they have to have like some weed out criteria. So my GPA personally was like a 3.2. And I applied to 28 schools, which is a fucking lot, and was very expensive, especially for a college student. And I got a grand total of 1 interview at the school that I ultimately ended up going to, and I got waitlisted there. Despite the fact that, my course load was much, much, much more difficult than most people's there. And my class ranking was actually pretty good. I don't know if I was top 10%, but I was easily top 20, with like I think my physics GPA was like a 3.0 or something. But like my Mcat score was top, it was 95th percentile, like it was really good. So those are the types of things that kind of are missed, and we'll go into that again a little bit further in the future here in this talk. So anyway, you get your good grades, then you prep for taking the MCAT. All of this stuff requires a fair amount of dedication. You've got to, really focus on doing well in these classes. And that's hard to do in college, or at least it was for me. There's always like something else that I would have rather been doing, and like the temptation was constant. So a lot of people wash out because of that, because they just, they can't hang basically, and don't want to put in the effort to push through and like get the grades and stuff that they need. And that's understandable, that's okay. Like, med school is not cut out for, or not everyone is cut out for med school. And if you recognize that early on, good for you. because that will save you a lot of problems and a shit ton of effort. But anyway, so you have to make some sacrifices to like perform at the level that you really need to be a good, highly qualified candidate. The Mcat is no different. So it's a lot of material. I believe the format has changed since I took it, but I don't know that it's changed enough for what I have to say to not matter. I don't think it has. So when I took it, it was technically 4 sections, but really only 3, because one of them was a writing section that basically by everyone's account is almost entirely disregarded. So the sections were like biological sciences, physical sciences, and essentially like reading comprehension. So the physical sciences was like basic physics and inorganic chemistry. The biological sciences was like basically everything biology plus organic chemistry. And the reading comprehension was exactly what it sounds like. It was just like passages that you had to interpret and, answer stupid questions about. It wasn't bad for me, honestly. I've always been a pretty good test taker. Like that, I was you may find this shocking, but I was a hugely nerdy kid, and I was a mathlete. Yeah. So I basically grew up taking like, pretty intense tests, like voluntarily. So that's not something that was like super new to me or daunting. But I can certainly understand how, that would shake a lot of people, because it is a very important test and essentially determines, or is one of the 2 main determinants of your, the like quality of your resume, to get into med school. So, yeah. So the MCAT is a crap ton of information. You really have to like make a plan to break it down into like digestible quantities. Otherwise it's going to eat you alive, because it is such a huge amount of info. Like I had a review book for it from Princeton Review that was like bigger than most phone books, and you essentially have to know all of that. Right. So you get that out of the way. An average score for for people offered spots in med school, so people who got into med school, I think when I took it was a 31. The scoring has changed since then, like I mentioned, but that was, I want to say that was like a mid 70s percentile ish. So pretty good score, right? Like, you need to do well to get in, just like anything else. The next part is the part that's terrible so this is where med school admissions, comes in, and, I will try to keep this from sounding like a rant, but, it's basically gonna be because med school admissions, in my opinion, is broken, basically. So the application season, I want to say, starts in like May or June. It's been a while since I've done this, so forgive the vagueness, but basically the earlier you apply, the better, because you have, more time to pivot and more time to be offered interviews and things like that. So, you want to get your application in quickly. Where it sucks, where it starts to suck, is a lot of schools offer what they call secondary applications, which Sometimes, okay, so let's back up a second. So how you apply to med school is you submit all of your information, which includes like transcripts, MCAT score, letters of recommendation, and a personal statement, plus any other like, supporting documents that you feel like will help your case. You submit that to this centralized service, and then have them send out that application to every school that you want to apply to. And there's a fee to do that. So you pay to apply to these schools. Many, if not most, schools have a secondary application that, might require another essay or two. It might, be like, they want some more information about you or whatever. But they also want more money. And when I was doing it, there were some schools that basically just wanted you to, and I say basically, they literally just wanted you to pay them an extra $150. And that's it. That was their whole secondary application, was just pay them more money, which is terrible for a college student. Like, there's no way for you to get this cash most of the time, right? So you can imagine for someone like me who applied to 28 schools, that got very expensive very, very fast. And even the ones that sort of like try to cover up the fact that they're just fleecing you, their essay topics are just awful. Like they're basically testing to see how you like talk in circles, or like come up with something reasonably intelligent to say about something that doesn't matter at all or doesn't apply at all, which in some respects is a valuable trait, I guess. But it's a very frustrating and very expensive in terms of like monetarily and time process, because you're like, or at least I was obsessed with like making everything top notch, writing awesome essays, and I am a pretty good writer, and I put a ton of effort into those applications, and I didn't understand at the time that those are just revenue generators. Nobody looks at those, with any sort of critical eye. They just look at the rest of your application, and if it's not good enough, they dumpster it. And that happened. I'm sure that happened to me a lot with my grade point average. They just offered me the secondary application because they wanted me to, send them money, and I did. So it's like kind of a borderline predatory process, in my opinion, in that regard. So they just they take, students' money, like, who never had a chance to get in the first place, and they just instantly reject you after you pay their secondary fee. So that's the first major failing of med school admissions, in my mind. So things that they're looking for, other than your grades and your scores, are things like relevant experience, which, would a lot of people interpret to mean volunteerism. My volunteer experience, and most people's, is 100% useless for informing your decision to become a doctor. It means absolutely nothing. Most people do what I did, which was volunteer in the ER, transport patients, work in, maybe it's non-medical volunteering, they'll do I don't know, work for harvesters or something like that, just to kind of pad their resume. I personally think all of that's a huge waste of time. Obviously volunteerism in general is not, but if you're doing it to get into med school specifically, and to or even if you're a little bit more forward thinking than that, and you're doing it to actually try to help yourself make a good life decision and like pick a career that matters to you, those are useless activities. I do not know why med schools value that. Forced volunteerism is like, I mean, what's the point? You know, I just don't get it. Like, it's not an altruistic act because everybody understands that it's just sort of a de facto requirement that you have some sort of volunteerism on your, on your application, unless you have like other life experience that's just like remarkable that you can, bring to bear, that sets you apart from everybody else. But the vast majority of people just volunteer to like say they've done it. I personally worked, like I said, I did some like patient transport stuff. I worked in an ER, like putting patient charts together, which again has zero to do with actually practicing medicine or learning it. But I was a pharmacy tech. And again, I've kind of discussed this earlier. And while that's not medicine per se, I got more out of that job than pretty much everybody else did out of all of their other like extracurricular activities, as far as actually like learning what I was going to be doing. I pretty much knew everything from my pharmacy class before I got there. There are some exceptions to that, like medicines that are like almost exclusively used in hospitals, like IV stuff that's not orally or available as an injection. I didn't know a whole lot about, but that was usually, those are just sort of different medicines in the same classes of things that I already knew about. So it really, really helped. But more than that, it helped dealing with people. I kind of learned how to navigate like, challenging patients, like people who are upset at you for no reason. People who are asking tons of questions, and like how to deal with that, basically, like how to navigate that when you don't know the answer, and like just sort of learning how a healthcare environment works, basically. So like, if med schools, in my opinion, are going to require anything, they need to require some sort of relevant work, because that's where, even if you have some sort of entry-level position like I did, you are relied upon to be functional and like a working part of a team to at least some degree, right? Like, if you're a volunteer, anything that they get out of you is a bonus because you're free labor. If you vanished the second day on the job, nobody would probably even notice. But if you work there, like, you have responsibilities, you are sort of forced to learn and figure out what you're doing to at least some degree. If you care enough to get this job, with an eye towards like, informing your career, then I find it hard to believe that you wouldn't care enough to like try and learn what you're doing. So I think that situation probably would never present itself unless you get in there and you're just like, this is fucking terrible, I'm stopping, which is again a possible and ultimately probably a good outcome for you. Because if you figure out that that's not what you want to do, then good for you, do something else. I don't know what the percentage of people who go into college saying that they want to go to med school, like they think they're going to be pre-med, but they don't end up following through with it. I don't know what that percentage is, but it's high. I would say something like 3/4 at least. And that means like, don't even apply to med school. And of that 25% who apply, probably like at least 2/3 of them don't get in, I would guess. Those are totally fabricated numbers, but the point is, the amount of people who go into college thinking they're going to go to med school, who end up actually going to med school, is very small. So anyway, yeah, if they were actually concerned about you doing things that mattered to you, they being med school admissions committees, they would require work experience rather than volunteerism. And just to be clear, these are, unless things have changed since I went through, which, you know, is certainly possible because I was like 13-ish years ago. Man, I'm old. Damn. But those were not like black and white requirements. They're just sort of understood requirements. So anyway, so you applied all your schools. You do all, you know, jump through all of the hoops that are required of you, do all of your applications and whatnot, and then schools decide whether or not they want to interview you. I'm sure this past year, school interviews were just a total shit show, but the way it has traditionally worked and probably will continue to work in the upcoming future is you go to the school, you interview with, you know, whomever they think that you should talk with, and schools have a whole bunch of different interview formats. Like, you know, sometimes you do like multiple one-on-one interviews. Did I finish this? Yeah, I did. Sometimes you do like, you know, my one interview was like a panel interview. So I had one senior med student and then 2 faculty interviewing me. And I was a part of that process as well, as a senior med student. So, you know, you do that, and then they decide whether they want you or not. Basically, they can reject you, they can waitlist you, or they can accept you. Like I said, I got waitlisted, so I got to wait until May 15th. My interview was in November, and I was kind of making other life plans, basically, like planning to get a job and move on, when I ultimately got accepted. And that was a really good day. It was a real good day. Also happens to be my mom's birthday, just coincidentally. Anyway, it's potentially a really long process if you're a borderline candidate, which again I was. And that was like my one and only choice, since that was the only interview I got. But, oh, you know what? I forgot to do the ritual on that last map. Damn. Oh well. So, right, after you get accepted, you, or don't get accepted, I guess, you know, you make plans for your immediate future. So med school starts up, you know, same time as any other school, like August, and you go there, and they, you know, they have a little bit of like orientation type stuff going on, and everybody, you know, tells you like all of this stuff that we like to believe about ourselves, like, you know, your life is now devoted to patients. Patients are more important than you. The analogy that everybody loves to use is going to med school is like drinking from a fire hose in terms of like absorbing information, and I'm just like so fucking sick of that. Like even now I could just I hate it. I hate it. Like, yeah, it's a lot of information. We get it. Okay, we all know this. Let's move past it. But yeah, so they beat that into your brain, and I guess, you know, that's sort of an expectation management thing. Like, you know, if you expect this to be the worst experience of your life, it might not be. I think anything above that is an improvement. But med school itself can come in many different styles. So there's, just to list a few, so there are schools that do just like one subject at a time. So like you learn biochemistry, and then you learn anatomy, and then you learn physiology, and then you learn pharmacology, or whatever order they want to do it in. That is sort of becoming outmoded in favor of one of these two next solutions. So what I did was referred to as an integrated, a systems integrated approach, which basically meant that you learn all of the like subject material for an organ system at a time. So like you learn all of the pathology and physiology and like biochemistry and anatomy for your lungs, like for pulmonary, and then you do all of that for your heart, and then you do all of that for renal stuff, kidney stuff, and you move along that way. And to me, that made a lot more sense. The other sort of, in my opinion, new agey and excruciatingly painful way to do things is called problem-based learning. And that's essentially where they divide you up into small groups, and you have like a patient case or scenario or something that you guys have to talk through. And to me, that's sort of the blind leading the blind, and it is not at all how I learn. So I am very, very glad that there is minimal problem-based learning in my med school. But some people really like it and do well with it, so more power to you. But basically, you do that all the way through. And all of those subjects comprise your first 2 years of med school, unless you're going to a more progressive school which has condensed those things into 1 year, which I think is very viable. And we'll talk about that in a second. So you do those things. So my school in particular we started off with cell biology and biochemistry, because quite frankly, in terms of medicine, unless you're doing research, those subjects are, will be nice and say, minimally useful. I would say I basically use none of cell biology, because it's basically about weird like zebra diseases and like ticky-tack sort of cell functions that just really don't like come up in clinical practice unless that's what you focus on. Let's go kill the Eradicator, or try to. Yeah, so much for not doing in-game content. Those 2 months were not real fun, because it is a lot of information. There's no doubt about it. Like so like comparing college with med school is not a very like easy thing to do, but if you like try to compare like the hours, med school is like taking like upper 20s to low 30s hours in a semester in college. It's a shitload of work, but that doesn't translate well because it's just so different. Like the time requirements are so new, and the way you have to learn things is very, very different. Unless you're the type of person who just like mass memorizes everything, no matter what, then med school probably wouldn't be that much different for you. Anyway, so we did cell bio and cell bio and biochemistry, both of which are essentially useless, to be honest, to me even. Like, and I'm all about the like pharmacology and stuff. There are very few concepts that I employ from those classes. But we did those, and then we kind of moved into the interesting stuff, which was the systems integration. I have always learned best by understanding things, and really like, I mean that sounds like a really stupid thing to say, but like really like hammering home concepts in my mind and having like a holistic understanding of what I'm trying to learn, which is why I liked physics a whole lot, because that's like a tangible thing. Like you can visualize, or at least I can visualize, like in my mind's eye, what like a solution means most of the time. You know, like you work out some like equation for motion, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can see how that makes sense. Unfortunately, med school does not allow for that a lot of the time. Like in anatomy in particular, I mean, there's nothing to understand about this is your femur. Like, it's your femur. You just have to fucking memorize it, right? Like, there's not like, there's very little information that isn't just like straight factual. And just something that you have to jam into your brain. And I had a difficult time with that, quite frankly. The rest, though, like physiology, pathology, all of that sort of stuff, I really enjoyed. Like, on an intellectual level, at least. Like, the workload is very taxing and difficult. But, you know, learning how, like, basically how everything can go wrong, I thought was really cool. So anyway, we did all of that stuff. I mean, basically, I just partied a lot. Like, med students party hard, dude. Like, you work hard, play hard. And I met, doing that, I met lots of people who are going to be lifelong friends. Like, actually, my best friend from med school just moved to Kansas City from DC to join my tiny, like, sort of rural hospital practice because, like, we're just tight, And I was like, hey, man, we have this good job offer. Come on. And he did. So, I mean, I definitely, like, your friends and you will be thick as thieves. It's like going through war together. It's kind of crazy, really. Certainly that isn't the case with everybody, but, you just share this sort of bond that, nobody who hasn't gone through med school will, like, truly understand. Like I said, it's kind of like war. Obviously without the, like, loss and gruesome nature of it, but, like, mentally that's sort of the same struggle. So med school requires a essentially total commitment. A lot of people work through college. That is basically impossible in med school. There's no way that you can hold down a job in any meaningful manner. It's too much work, and you will flounder, especially around like test time. That's gonna be just impossible. So, that places some pretty significant financial strain on most people, because it's, unless you have like a huge nest egg built up, you're going to be taking loans out. You just have to, because there's no other way to do it. And med school is very, very expensive. I personally am several $100,000 in debt because of it, and that's just how it goes. Like, that's, if you want to go to med school, you got to pay the tuition, and I was a poor college student going into it. I had no choice. So that's something to consider as well. You're going to be in a large amount of debt after med school is done. You'll have a really good job, be able to pay it off, but think about it real hard. So anyway, first year med school. Other than anatomy, I did okay. I did fine. I think I was like kind of somewhere in the like 60th percentile or something in my class. Like, I was above half the first 2 years. But yeah, the first and second years of med school are much the same. It's all a whole bunch of like basic science stuff. our first year, let's see if I can remember this. So we did cell bio, biochemistry first off, and then we had anatomy, physiology, man, what else? Genetics, embryology. Embryology is another one that doesn't matter unless you go into it for the most part. I think that's it. And then we did neuroscience, which is, you know, sort of all of that plus a little bit of like weird nerve and brain function. And then second year we did is like how things go wrong. So like first year is normal function. Second year is how things go wrong. So we did pathology, like microbiology, so like diseases, and what else did we do? I think we did genetics second year as well. Trying to run back through it. Well, but, oh yeah, and then pharmacology, so how to fix things that go wrong, right? And like all the while you're being tested on all this stuff pretty constantly, right? So that's another thing that varies by school. Okay, right, so you're being tested. So how that happens is, again, school dependent. Some places do, like, they have like tests in, you know, everything, just kind of, you know, like you'll have a test in pharmacology and then a test in microbiology and whatever. And they all, like, each class has its own schedule. Mine integrated everything. So we just had one test over everything, like every month-ish or something. But, you know, again, that's just potato. It just depends where you go. So at the end of your second year, you take a test called Step 1. Step 1 is essentially a test over everything in the first 2 years of med school. So you, and it also happens to be the most important qualifier for residency spots. So they're trying to change that, and I think may have changed that by not actually assigning a score to Step 1. Because, like, theoretically it was pass-fail anyway, but they gave you, like, a score from 180 or something to 300. But everybody just, like, ignored that piece of information and, you know, scored you according to, you know, whatever you did. And, you know, it was still, even though it was supposed to be pass-fail, it's like, again, the most important factor in determining how qualified you are for residency. So, big stress, lots of stress in this test. The school structures it so that, like, you have a lot of time to study for it. So most people take it in the summer, like summer break after their second year. So most people have between like 6 and 8 weeks to study for it. And if you want to talk about having to, like, make a master plan to get through something, that is like, that is the ultimate example, because there is just such an unbelievable amount of info that you have to get through, and it will crush your soul if you don't have a plan. Like, if you don't chop it down into, like, digestible bits, you're done. So what I did was exactly that. There's a few resources that are sort of like the gold standard for like reviewing all that stuff. So there's like one book called well, actually, now that I think about it, I can't remember what it's called, but it's by Edward Golion, and it's like it's all the pathology that you need, all of it. And in the process, like, most of the anatomy and physiology and some of the pharmacology that you need. So you get that, and there's a question bank called USMLE World, which is very, very high quality study questions. And you basically go through that, and you can organize it by organ system, you can organize it by subject, you can select questions that you've gotten wrong previously, you can do any questions, whatever. And they have very detailed explanations for all of it's a multiple choice test, and they have very detailed explanations for all of the selections, whether they're correct or incorrect. And it is a very, very efficient way to study. So I use those things in addition to like one or two other books that I sort of needed, some like extra background on, basically. I mentioned that some med schools are kind of going to a one-year mode for the basic sciences, and that's because you can basically hand people those resources and just be like, you need to know all of this, all of it. You just have to learn everything. And you have 1 year to do it. Go. I personally took a while to figure out that learning everything on my own was the best way to do it, because traditionally I had always gone to class, and I did go to class for like the first half of my first year of med school, and I found myself like dicking around in class most of the time. Quite frankly, like I was online just like staring into space while I waited for somebody to like finish the slideshow, and they posted all of their slideshows online. So like after a while I just kind of like sacked up and stayed home and studied for a whole like test cycle on my own, and like it worked super well for me. It was much more efficient, spending like 15 minutes a lecture, like, and getting the material down better than when I was spending 50 minutes a lecture in person and kind of dicking around through it. So I had lots more free time. I learned the material better, and I started doing better in class also. Did I actually purchase stuff from the rituals here? I can't remember. I guess I'll have to find one. I am one of the people who, if they had just been like, learn all of this, go, I would have done fine. That fits my personality. I'm very goal oriented and like driven to do things like that. And that would not have been a problem. I can see how it may have been for other people and how that might not work, but for me that would have been fine. I probably could have done it in 6 months, honestly. If I knew that that's like what had to be done and I had to know all of that material, I would have figured out a way to make it happen. But like I said, a lot of schools are sort of recognizing that and moving towards that model, actually. So after you take step one and sort of seal your fate, you move on to your clinical years. Now, if you wanted to do something like plastic surgery or dermatology or neurosurgery, something like really competitive like that, and you didn't score appropriately for those things, then you either have a whole lot of catch up to do in terms of clinical grades. So clinical grades are probably like 1B. So like step 1 is 1A in how qualified you are for residency. Clinical grades are 1B. So doing well in clinicals is very important. And that's something that you have like a little bit more direct control over, since it's sort of a more strung out thing and you're not like kind of getting RNG'd with the questions you get on some multiple choice test. And it's, something that you can take in chunks a little bit more easily. So that is a way that you can sort of shore up your residency application, but ultimately you need to sort of be like within striking distance if you want to do something competitive. If you don't, then you're good. Failing step 1 is a huge problem and basically dooms you to a less competitive specialty. That's, not an absolute, but it's really, really hard to get anything other than like primary care, or sort of like, which in primary care, generally speaking, is like not at all desirable. And we can talk about that maybe another time, but anyway, if you fail step 1, I want to say you have 3 chances to take it. And if you fail all 3 times, you cannot get a medical license, so you're done. But if you take it, like if you fail and then you pass on a subsequent attempt, that badly damages your candidacy. So the least competitive specialties are things like family practice, internal medicine, psychiatry, pediatrics, obstetrics. I think are the 5 least competitive off the top of my head. And things like anesthesia, for instance, emergency medicine, like general surgery, things like that are sort of in the middle of the pack. You could probably be in, okay shape for getting a like lower prestige residency in those specialties if you subsequently passed with a decent score. But otherwise, you're just kind of hosed, honestly. Step 1, very, very important. So anyway, clinicals, that's where I really, really had a good time. Like, the work is grueling at times. Certain rotations are worse than others. Like my first rotation that I did, I thought I was being real smart and picking plastic surgery. What I did not know, and I think this is one of the things I mentioned previously, what I did not know is that one of the 2 plastic surgeons that worked at the hospital I was training at was a ridiculous workaholic and did surgeries that literally lasted for 20 hours. And it also, he covered 3 hospitals, so I had to drive around every morning starting at like 4:30 a.m., see patients at multiple hospitals, and kind of report back to him by like 7:15 before the first start surgery at 7:30 at whatever hospital he was working at. Rinse and repeat, and I would get home at on a good day 9 p.m. So, and you're expected to like study and be learning like the basics of surgery and stuff all the while as well. So I was working, 14 to 16 hour days, and then had to come back and, like eat and maybe study for like half an hour or something, and then go to sleep and do it again. And I did that for a month, and it was fucking terrible. I learned a lot, and it was definitely like a hardcore trial by fire sort of thing. But man, it was bad. It was real bad. But there are also rotations where that is not the case. I did my OB rotation at the VA, which sounds real weird. But I worked about 10 hours a week and did much more in terms of like practical experience than basically anybody else in my class did. I was the only person who rotated at the VA because, as you might imagine, they don't have a lot of volume, so they couldn't support more than one student. But like the doctor I worked with there was like real old school, and he was like, "Yeah, get in there, man, do that surgery." And I did, and it was awesome. Like, I worked 10 to 15 hours a week. I learned a ton. It was all hands-on. Like, I got, like I said, more experience than anybody else. Like, they were like most of the people in my class were just like, you know, OR bitches. Like they just held instruments or something and like didn't do anything useful. And, you know, worked long hours, and it just was just a really shitty experience. So, work smarter, not harder, right? That's kind of what that's all about. So anyway, rotations, they can be brutal, but that's really where you, like, you know, kind of get a true taste of like what you're in med school for, because you're actually like practicing medicine. I mean, you know, nobody wants to hear this, but like as a med student, you are like basically the most worthless person in the hospital. Like you are 100% completely useless most of the time. And you are in the way, and unfortunately are often treated as such instead of like people trying to, you know, help you out and help you learn. A lot of the time you'll just be sort of marginalized, and you know, you're just there. Or people treat you like a plaything and kind of like fuck with you. That is especially true in places like surgery, where they just sort of like, well, so here's a good example. So there's this practice called pimping, which is basically, you just ask somebody questions until you like beat them into the ground. Like, you're like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this operation? Why are we doing this technique? You know, what's the surgeon looking at right now? What's he working on? What, you know, tissue layer is he cutting through? Like, just asking questions the whole time. And I found that, like, sometimes that's useful to keep you engaged, like the whole Socratic method thing. But I found it discouraging, personally, because I would ask a question, like, I would try to be engaged in what we were doing and, like, ask a question about, you know, the procedure that I was like, I don't understand this. And then somebody would say, well, I don't know, why don't you tell me? And like, well, dude, I wouldn't have asked the question if I knew. Like, if I knew the answer to this, I definitely would not have opened my mouth. And then they'll tell you something like, well, why don't you read about that tonight? Like, well, or you could tell me the answer and we can talk about it now. And we can work with it, you know, work with this concept within the framework of knowledge that I have already. And, you know, I'm happy to read about it later, but, you know, we're in kind of the heat of the moment and it's practically applicable at this point. So how about we talk about it now? But that was not how things worked, unfortunately. But again, overall, you know, that's like, you finally get to like apply all this knowledge instead of just like beating your freaking face in with test after test after test. You know, clinicals are where you get to use it, and it's a good feeling. Like I'm a very experiential learner as well, so I thrived. I did well with that, and like I said, I'd figured out that like doing stuff myself was the way to do it. That was like the method that worked best for me. So I actually ended up there were a lot of like lectures and stuff that I basically just skipped. Like I can remember in our internal medicine rotation, there were lectures where we literally just went over practice questions, and and at that point I had been learning with practice questions for quite a while, because I found that extremely efficient. You know, during an hour lecture, they would go through like 10-ish questions in detail, whereas on my own, I could easily do 40 in an hour. So like, that was working at 1/4 efficiency, and I was just not gonna have that. I had zero interest in wasting, you know, 3/4 of my time. So I didn't, and I skipped all those lectures. But fortunately, that was not an issue. Nobody seemed to have any problems with that. Or at least I didn't get caught. Yeah. So that's your third year. So your third year, as I've mentioned before, is sort of so it's clinicals, but it's all the like base rotations. So you do surgery, family practice, internal medicine, so family practice or primary care of some kind, obstetrics, psychiatry, and pediatrics. Am I missing something? Might be missing something. But anyway, like all the basic, like fundamental stuff of medicine. Sometimes you can throw in some like specialties there. Like I had a 3-month surgery rotation, and one of those months was a week each on anesthesia, orthopedics, ear, nose, and throat surgery, and urology, which was a great month. I like doing surgical subspecialties, basically. It was really cool. But yeah, so you get that out of the way, and then your 4th year is mostly elective stuff. So you, like, at that point are expected to have narrowed down what profession, what specialty you think you want to do, and go for it, basically. So you schedule your year. Usually they have some sort of loose requirements, like you have to do, like, we had to do like a geriatrics rotation. So I did a week of geriatrics, or a month of geriatrics, and we had, what else did we have to do? We had to do a month of like rural primary care, and I think that might have been it. I think those were the only requirements that we had to do. But you have to meet like a certain amount of months, of rotations scheduled. But otherwise, like, you're free to do whatever you want. So, a lot of people, especially if they're considering doing competitive specialties, will go and do what's called an away rotation, and they'll actually schedule a rotation like at another hospital that they presumably want to go to, and that's so you get FaceTime there and make some connections, and also maybe have some like a relatively prestigious rotation under your belt when you go to apply to residency, so you can be show off your shiny experience that is supposed to impress everybody. I need to do some Valdo's maps, get some harbingers going on. So right, so you do away rotations, which kind of are like, they present their own set of problems. Like, imagine finding somewhere to stay for a month, right? Like, it's kind of too long to couch surf, but it's not really long enough for most places to like rent to you. And also keep in mind that you're a med student in a heinous amount of debt with zero income. They did, my school at least did give us extra money. Like, they allowed a higher cost of living, so we could get more loans. Yay. more federal loans at 8.5%. Thanks, guys. Thanks. So we could pay for those rotations and for interviews, which end up being pretty expensive if you have to travel a lot. And we'll get to that in a second. So, yeah, so that can be a potentially challenging thing, and sometimes like those away rotations are brutal. Like my roommate in med school went to a very prestigious ophthalmology rotation, and they just like they know that they're hot shit, and they want you to prove that you want to be there, and they like made him do a bunch of presentations and like work super extra hard. Kind of beat him down for a month, but I think that's where he ultimately ended up doing his residency, so it paid off. But you can also make your 4th year very relaxed if you want to, which I did. So anesthesia by nature is like sort of a very like it's very high intensity for short bursts kind of specialty. So what that means as a student is that you basically get to show up and do a bunch of cool shit. Like, you put place IVs, intubate people, just do a bunch of like procedures that you'd never otherwise be allowed to do, and that not really anybody else in the hospital does for the most part. And then you go home. You know, I was going home, like, even though I knew I wanted to do anesthesia at that point and was kind of like, you know, sucking up a little bit and like working really hard. I was going home at 1 or 2 pretty much every day. So I was having, you know, 6 to 7 hour days, work days. And that was awesome. Like, it was great. And like doing what I wanted to do and just kind of like floating around between different operating rooms. You know, just getting stuff done, like having a good time, talking with people. Like I really enjoyed those rotations. And everybody else was kind of on the same page, and it was like party time, man. Like, we did a bunch of partying, and it was really fun. And everybody was like, you know, you're through most of your like big exams at that point. But so with that in mind, at the beginning of your 4th year, generally you so med school is 4 years, in case that kind of slipped through the cracks. So at the beginning of your 4th year, you take step 2. So there are the steps are your medical licensure exams. So there's 3 of them, and you take the second one at the beginning of your 4th year. It is not nearly as important as step 1, though if you do very well or very badly on it, that can harm you. But it's not really considered highly because a lot of people don't actually have step 2 done, or at least don't have a score back by the time they're selected to interview for residencies. So it's kind of a, you know, it can help you a lot, but it can't really hurt you. Well, it can help you a moderate amount, but it can't really hurt you that much. So you do that, and then like kind of get that out of the way, and it's much like most people will tell you it's much easier than step 1, because it's kind of the same thing, but it's got like a little more clinical slant to it rather than just like, you know, name this drug, name this body part sort of thing, which is what step 1 asks you. It's, you know, sort of in a clinical framing, like you have this patient with these problems, you know, what do you think's going on? And so you've been using all this knowledge that you learned for step 1 for a year and change at that point, and you know, therefore those questions are much easier to answer. So you get that out of the way. Early in the year, probably like, I want to say like September-ish, you apply for residencies, and that goes much the same way that med school did, in a lot of ways. So you like send all your stuff to a centralized application service, and then apply to, you know, whatever schools you want, and it costs, you know, X amount of dollars to do that. And then they decide if they want to interview you or not. I think they require a personal statement there too. But the amount of bullshit required for residency application is much, much, much lower than for med school. You know, I think at that point they figure that you've already sort of earned your chops to some degree, and, you know, you don't have to write all these fucking ridiculous essays that don't mean anything, and, like, you know, the schools aren't out to fleece you. So they decide if they want to interview you, and you go on your interviews. And I personally interview very well, which may not be a huge surprise given that I'm sitting here just like talking to, you know, strangers and hopefully making sense. But, yeah, like interviewing was not a stressful process for me. I had a lot of fun traveling. I actually, like, I got to, one of my best friends from college was gracious enough to take me into her Chicago apartment, and I managed to schedule 3 interviews in a week there. So I just like basically sat on her couch for a week and saved myself a ton of cash, got to enjoy Chicago, eat some really good food. Like, these residencies actually kind of like wine and dine you a fair bit. So you oh, I didn't do the frickin' ritual. I think the last one was down here, right? but yeah, so you get to go out to these nice dinners, and just like for me, like I said, it was just an enjoyable experience. It was kind of like the logistics was a little daunting because like you have to figure out a way to get yourself across the country on a pretty limited budget. I personally, I consolidated trips as much as I could. And at the time, Megabus was running all over the place, so I was like megabusing it all over. And I applied mostly in the Midwest, so I was just megabusing all over the place. It took a while, but it was like $10 to get 800 miles. So like, fuck it, who cares? But after you do all of your residency interviews, that's when shit gets weird. So there's this process that and also another thing that really helped my interview season be nice is that I was very qualified. I scored really well. Not like incredibly well, but I want to say I was like the 80th-ish percentile on step one. So in anesthesia at the time, I don't know what it is now, but at the time it was kind of like above average competitiveness. So not like super hard to get into. And I applied to a ton of schools. So like statistically I was set. I think I got 16 interviews, and like if you looked at the stats at that time, people who ranked 7 or more programs, and we'll get to what that means in a second. People who ranked 7 or more programs, had a 99.8% chance of matching or something. So anyway, so that took off a lot of stress. I knew I was probably going to be fine. Anyway, so what the match is you take all of the programs that interviewed you and you put them in a rank list. So you rank them in order of how you liked them. And you can choose, that can be whatever, based on whatever criteria that you want. The city, the weather, the quality of the program, like the people you met, whatever you want. So you just rank all these programs, and they do the same to the people that they've interviewed. So they rank all of the people based on how big of a dick you were during your interview process. And they submit those to this centralized application service. And then that service crunches all of that data into some algorithm that tells you where you're going to be for the next while. So residency programs are between 3 and 7 years. And this is a binding contract, so that you agree to when you start using this application service, and you have to use the application service, so you have no choice. And they tell you where you're going to go. There's supposedly heavy weighting in favor of the applicant, as to where you get to choose to go, and how the rank lists work and stuff. But that's kind of mildly relevant in my opinion. They still just tell you where you're going to be for the next immediate future. Oh, perfect movement speed roll. Yeah, nice. Let's see what perfect goes for. 10C? Yeah. Or well, I'll put it up for 7 and hopefully sell it quickly. I'm not going to be stressing over 3C at this point. So yeah, the match is a very interesting time. What they do for the match is so they send the match results to your school, they being that centralized application service. They send the results to your school, so the school knows where everybody matched, a couple days before the applicants find out, I want to say. Like, I think they get the information on Monday, and then, like, match day is, like, a Wednesday or Thursday or something. So this is, like, a nationwide, huge, like, party, essentially. Like, med schools everywhere have this, like, this day blocked off where, everybody is just going to go batshit and, like, go nuts, and the school sponsor these huge parties, and, it's a big celebration. And most places you go and, like, you open this envelope that contains your match information, like where you're going to be doing your residency. And most places have you do that on stage, which, if you're, like, aiming for something like a really competitive specialty and you don't get it, that, that might go badly for a lot of reasons. So you do that, and, like, you have your match day party, and it's lots of fun. Mine was awesome. We had tons of really good food, and, most of my good friends were happy with where they went. Basically got good news. And, like, we rented out an event space and had good food catered, and everybody was trashed, and, like, we threw an awesome party and everybody had a great time. It was really, really cool. Positive experience. But then you have, like, a couple months of dead time where you either, like, had some rotation that you just had to, like, stick at the end of the year because you couldn't fit it in somewhere. And, you don't, like, you're just going through the motions at that point, man. Like, you've matched, you have a job. Like, you don't give a fuck about any of those rotations. Like, it's all just busy work. Even if it's something that you, like, kind of wanted to do, it's just crap. It's all a waste of time. So you get through that, and I personally did not have to do that, fortunately. I finished, like, I was very smart and deliberate about how I set my fourth year up, and I finished in January, like at the end of January. So I had from January to July off, basically, with a few, like, exceptions of, required school meetings and stuff like that. But as far as, like, actual work goes, I had 6 months off, or 5 months off. So yeah, then you go and graduate, and that is another hell of a party. And after graduation, you kind of get your affairs in order, move wherever you need to for your residency if necessary. And then you start residency in July 1st. July 1st is a very terrifying time to be in hospital for everyone there, because the new residents are starting, and they don't know what the hell's going on, and they know it. Like, they're still doctors, but, like, there's a bunch of logistical issues in addition to the fact that they're still not, like, used to being sort of, like, independent practitioners. So that's a really interesting time. But that's med school. That's 4 years of very, very, very intense schooling in, about an hour and a half or so? So you're welcome. So think about all that, like, if you're thinking that you want to go into medicine, that's all food for thought, right? Like, I'm happy to talk further about it. Like, if you want to PM me or something, like, let me know what your thoughts are. Tell me I'm wrong. Want clarification, whatever. More than happy to talk about this. So a very good resource that I actually personally benefited from a whole lot was a website called the Student Doctor Network, which, if I recall, is studentdoctor.net. I was actually a moderator there for quite a while, and, like, helped people with like, optimize their applications, basically. Like, helped them with personal statements, informed them on, like, what they need to do to improve candidacy and things along those lines. So I've done a fair amount of that, like, application work in the relatively distant past at this point. But, I could still feed you some potentially useful information. But if you just drop by the site, that's probably better off. Buyer beware, though. You need to have a pretty highly functional bullshit detector to go there, because it's basically a website full of exceptionally neurotic pre-med students who all think they know what they're doing, and some of them do. Fair enough. But a lot of them are like, I only volunteered for 15 hours this week instead of my usual 70. Is that okay? Like, yeah, dude. Yeah, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be just fine. But yeah, I mean, if you dig deep and you sort of read with a critical eye, like it's a very, very good. Find a couple community members who are reliably posting good information and saying things that make sense, and you'll be good to go. That's the best resource, like widespread, large scale resource that I can recommend to you. But yeah, I made a few friends. Like I stayed with a couple of the people from that site during interviews, like around the country, and hung out with them. I mean, it was a very positive experience for me. It was difficult to, at times, like when I was first starting there, it was tough to figure out like just how much neuroticism was necessary in that process. The answer, unfortunately, is a lot. If you really want to like, perfect your application and be, like play the game well. That's something that the sky's the limit, kind of, and like how much effort you put into it. But yeah, give the Student Doctor Network a shot. See what you think, if that's something you're interested in, or like I said, or contact me. I'm happy to talk about it. But man, it's a long haul. Like, and that's just med school. That's not even residency. It's very challenging in terms of like mental health sort of issues. Like it's a tough adjustment. It's like physically grueling, which sort of compounds that issue. It's like that plastic surgery rotation I mentioned. I was like, dude, I was just beat down. I was working 100-hour weeks for, it was only a month. Like, but when you're expected, or you think that you're expected to perform at a high level, and you expect yourself to perform at a high level, which was more my issue. It's hard, man. It's hard to do that for that long, and you're gonna get tagged with that at some point in your training. Like, regardless of what specialty you choose, you're gonna be kind of in for a wild ride somewhere. Like maybe it's not gonna be your plastic surgery rotation, but maybe it's like OB. Maybe on OB you just like are there for a busy ass month and you deliver like 50,000 babies. And they're just like popping out left and right, and you're just, you're doing cool stuff, but you just can't catch a break. Like, you're just exhausted, even though, you're doing something that's kind of cool that most other people don't get to do. You're just getting beat down. And that's kind of where the drinking from a fire hose thing, comes into play. It's like, even if you like it, it's cool and refreshing. Like, it still sucks because it's blasting you down and kicking your ass. But if you can weather the storm for the parts that suck, it's a very rewarding career. Not to like, I say this without ego attached. Like, in my line of work, I literally save someone's life weekly, I would say. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's zero, but that's just like, that's what I do. That's my job. That's what I do for a living, is I keep people safe, and like I'm like the rescue crisis manager guy. What the fuck? Was that the entrance to the map or something? Oh, I gotta go over here. But yeah, it's cool. Like, to be 100% honest, knowing what I know now about myself, like I'm more self-aware now than I think I really have ever been. I think I would have been more successful doing something, more financially successful doing something else. Even though I make a very good living right now. the opportunity cost of med school is exceptionally high. Because I basically had 8 years where I had no job, right? And 4 of those years I was incurring tons of debt, and then another 4 of those years during residency I was incurring tons of interest. So more debt, basically. Oh, shit. Yes, I failed that. So what am I supposed to be attacking there? I don't even understand, like, where the boss was. Okay. Bummer. So yeah, that's my talk on med school. If you have any questions, let me know.